Each every Monday and Friday, we chat with the one and only Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. As the Phillies, they didn't just win 3 straight, Bob. They scored 7 runs in 3 straight games. I don't even recognize this team anymore after losing 3 straight and then winning 3 straight.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have playoff fever right now?
I have confusion fever. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're excited after this weekend, and I certainly don't want to throw cold water on anybody's excitement. The Phillies win 3 games this weekend after dropping the opener against the Diamondbacks. And that was what they were supposed to do, and it's something they didn't do, last week in Arizona. It was something that they struggled to do, obviously, on Thursday night. So you got to give them credit for rebounding and kind of salvaging what was turning into a really, really ugly homestand there, or had the potential to be. That being said, we're about to turn the calendar to September here. The Phillies still remain 4.5 games back. That's exactly where they were at the very start of the month, though that was behind the Mets. So they're kind of just spinning their wheels right now. And, they took advantage of a very, very bad Arizona team whose pitching is just paper thin. And given that the Phillies have had so many different issues in their lineup, it was nice to see certain guys produce. Now looking ahead to this week, they go down to Washington and they play just a flat-out awful Nationals team, but they're going to do so shorthanded. Meanwhile, the Braves have to go out west and play the Dodgers, and then they have to deal with the Rockies for 4 games after that. As bad as Colorado's been, they've been awesome at home. So the Phillies have to make a move this week. I don't think that that's exaggeration. I don't think it's being overly dramatic. If they're going to get back into this thing, the Phillies have to take care of business against Washington and Miami, and they have to hope that the Braves stumble a little bit out west.
Bob, you mentioned the shorthanded. How difficult is this Real Muto situation? Because remember, he was supposed to be part of the group of guys filling in at first base, and now ankle situation. He's not on the injured list, but we don't know how exactly long he's going to be out. This is becoming a real dicey situation now.
It is, and you'd like to say, hey, the fact that he's not on the IL would indicate that this isn't going to be a long-term thing. But I mean, how many times have you seen this season where the Phillies try to keep guys off the IL and then inevitably they end up back on it? I mean, we just saw that with Zach Eflin. He was scratched in his start. There was some hope that he wouldn't go back on the IL. Now he's probably done for the season. We went through this with Rhys Hoskins. We went through this with Didi Gregorius earlier in the year. We went through this with Bryce Harper earlier in the year. So, you kind of just have to hold your breath and cross your fingers with JT Realmuto at this point. They need him in this lineup. You consider all the different injuries that they have, all the different issues that they've had. He's been playing through, according to Gene Segura, who talked after the game on Friday, a little bit of a shoulder tweak, now the ankle. So, even if he's not at 100%, even though he struggled a little bit at times here over the last month or so, I mean, they have to get him back in the lineup as soon as possible.
And, of course, Gregorius is on the paternity list, so that can mean any number of days. Now, Galvis did come up big yesterday. He had a very good game yesterday, but you can't depend on Galvis to be the run driver in guy on a night-to-night basis.
No, you can't, and you really kind of – it seems like Didi Gregorius just can't get any he just can't sustain momentum. Now, obviously, he's out for hopefully a great reason here. Being on the paternity list is fantastic. I myself am going on the paternity list this week. My wife is actually – she was due yesterday. So, kind of just waiting here hour to hour. But, it's a great thing for him. But he gets 3 doubles the other night. Now he's out again. It's just like – you hope that when he comes back, he can kind of roll that momentum in and carry it into September. But, I mean, yeah, listen, counting on Freddie Galvis as an offensive force is a tough spot to be in. He's had an okay season offensively this year. OPS, I think, is in the high 600s. Flirting with 700 off and on. But, I mean, yeah, again, if for him to be hitting 6th in what you consider to be a playoff contending lineup, that's less than ideal.
Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad, who's expecting joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN at Bob Wankel CB. By the way, congratulations whenever the baby comes there.
Yeah, thanks. Now, if you hear anybody yell in the background and I have to cut this hit short, you'll know why.
Well, the same thing goes for Friday. If you can't come on Friday and we're 5 minutes out, you just make sure you text me and be like, bro, I'm out. All right.
Yeah, I'll give you plenty of advance notice. I will let you know.
But back to the Phillies. Ranger Suarez, to me, is one of the biggest surprises right now because this is a guy who, if I remember correctly, I don't think he was even on the team to start the year, right? So he comes in, becomes the closer for a hot minute, now goes to the rotation. They've won 4 of the last 6 games that he started, and he's still got that tiny little ERA going. I mean, how crazy is it that Ranger Suarez has become one of the most dependable pitchers for this staff?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a godsend for this team really all year in any role, and I was a little bit of I guess not a naysayer, but I had some reservations about moving him out of the bullpen and into the starting rotation. I mean, you consider just how bad the Phillies bullpen had been this year and last season, and I thought to myself, like, you finally have this versatile piece, and he's pitching well, like, just don't mess with it. But obviously, out of necessity, they have to move him into the starting rotation, and really, his success is carried over. And I've been particularly impressed with the fact that in his first handful of starts as he was getting stretched out, he wasn't really using a traditional breaking pitch. I mean, it was pretty much fastball, sinker, changeup. And my belief is that long-term, he's going to have to implement some type of breaking pitch to kind of complement that current mix. Now, yesterday, with Rafael Marchand behind the plate for the first time, we actually really saw Ranger Suarez go to a slider. Like, he's in the past thrown a slider, but he hasn't done so effectively. And this season, up until yesterday, he essentially abandoned the slider altogether. Then yesterday he added it, and he was good with it, and it was sharp. And I'll tell you what, man, if he can throw that pitch with some consistency and use it more than just a show-me pitch, and you consider how good his changeup's been and the sink that he gets on a consistent basis, Phillies really might have something here. I'm not telling you that he's an all-star. I'm not telling you that he's a number 1 or a number 2, but as a mid-rotation piece, I mean, you can feel really good right now about what this projects like going forward.
Speaking of going forward, I mean, even if the Phillies don't make the postseason this year, Bob, I mean, Ranger Suarez is now looking like he's part of your rotation next year, right? I mean, the rotation, if I'm thinking about it right now, is Wheeler, Nola, Gibson, Suarez, and I guess Eflin, right? I mean, you got 5 guys, and it's like, all right, well, that actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, right now, considering where they're at in the season, when you project out to next season, they would have all of these guys under contract. They conceivably could have this rotation if that's what they want, unless they decide that they can flip a trade, they can add value elsewhere, maybe sign another free agent to come in. Who knows, right? But going into 2022, it does look like they have 5 viable options. Now, the one caveat with that, obviously, is the health of Zach Eflin. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's relatively young, and he has put together spurts over the last handful of years where he's been tremendous. But there has been some inconsistencies, and it looked like just as he was finally overcoming that element of his game, now he's running back into these injury issues again. And so Phillies obviously are going to have to evaluate this offseason. Can he stay healthy, or is this just sort of a freak thing? I mean, I think you have to have concerns right now.
Well, also we know that because of the close contact and the COVID thing, that holds a whole nother set of ambiguity to it. Because, I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just saying there's a bunch of baseball teams this year who are using that COVID list as an excuse to not bring a guy back from the regular injured list. Kind of get that little extension. He was a close contact. No one's going to question them, right? So I almost wonder, with Eflin with the inflammation with the knee, did they use the close contact as an excuse to kind of just set him to the side for a little bit?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we kind of saw that with Chase Anderson earlier this season too. He goes out on the COVID IL, and I mean, he was out for quite some time. And I mean, they used the full extent of his rehab appearances in minor leagues, and then he comes back up, makes a couple of appearances, and then he's gone, And so I think the teams are probably using that within, what's reasonable. But I think that certainly having that, some teams are using that to their advantage. Real quick, just to go back to Ranger Suarez. I mean, one thing you said, will he stick in the rotation long term? I mean, I would assume so. Having a cost-controlled, productive starting pitching option, it's not easy to find those. I mean, heck, if you follow the Phillies for the last 10 years, you know that, right? So I think that they'll give him every opportunity moving beyond this season to stick in the starting rotation. And, through 5-6 starts here, like you said, they have every reason in the world to feel good about it.
Now, speaking of starters, they got 6 games coming up, 3 against the Nationals, 3 against the Marlins. 2 of those next 6 games, Zach Wheeler's on the mound. So to me, Bob, I look at this schedule, to me, it doesn't matter who the opponent is. If you can't win the 2 starts with Wheeler and you can't win the next start with Suarez and Gibson, You're not getting 4 out of 6 against the Nats and the Marlins. You're DOA, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, I just look at it, and this time of year, you have to start looking at the math. You know, you don't want to shovel dirt on a team. We've seen Phillies teams in the past in that previous golden era, you know, overcome larger deficits than this one later in the season, right? But when you just start to play with the numbers and you realize this Atlanta team has revamped itself and it's not just going to completely fold. I mean, the Phillies have to get going here. And like you said, Zach Wheeler twice to start and end the 6-game road trip. After that Mets game where we just thought he had basically made the announcement, I am the National League Cy Young Award winner. I mean, the Phillies have lost his next 3 starts. Now, that's not entirely on Zach Wheeler, right? Like, I mean, you look at his start against Tampa Bay, Joe Girardi leaves him in, things implode in the 9th inning. Against Arizona the previous week, he goes deep into the game. Things kind of got rough later in the game, right? So it's not like it's on Zach Wheeler necessarily, but this team has to find ways to win his starts. I mean, they have to win his starts. They have to win Aaron Nola's starts. They have to probably split, you know, the Gibson Suarez turn through the rotation. And then they just have to prey on Matt Moore. You know, Matt Moore is going to go up against Patrick Corbin, I believe, tomorrow night. And what you have there are basically 2 unproductive left-handed starters in their mid-30s who should get beat around. So that game to me is a toss-up. Phillies have to win 4-2. I think they have to pick up, you know, 2 games in the next 6. I think to really kind of look at this in September and say, all right, we've got ourselves a race.
Bob, one more before I let you go. How glad should every Philly fan be that their team is not the New York Mets?
Listen, you know, yeah, I mean, every Phillies fan should be glad. Not only has that organization not had a lot of success, but I mean, what you saw yesterday, and I know that they were doing it for a little bit longer. Nobody really picked up on it until yesterday with the thumbs down stuff, is insulting. You know, like they've lost 11 games in the National League East standings over the last calendar month, from July 28th to August 28th. They had a 2.5 game, or I'm sorry, what was it? A 4.5 game lead, 3.5 game lead, and now they're trailing by 7.5 games. I mean, it's absolutely absurd when you consider how poor they've played for anybody on that team to say absolutely anything about the fan base. You know, that being said, I understand in Philadelphia and New York, sometimes we're unfair. These guys are human beings too, all that. I get it. But that was crazy town yesterday.
And also the explanation after the game made it even worse. I mean, it's one thing to just do that, right? It's another thing to have the explanation and basically blaming the fans almost. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets fans just completely just like destroy them the very next home game.
They should. I mean, the team has been wretched. They were a team that looked like they were going to cakewalk their way to a National League East title. I know that Jacob deGrom's out, you know, that matters to an extent, but what that lineup has done now for the last month and a half, I mean, it's been disgraceful. Mets fans have every right in the world to be frustrated with that team right now.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, at Bob Wankel CB on Twitter. Go congratulate him. He's having a baby soon. Bob, appreciate you jumping on, man.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.